Welcome to the AT Center at TCNJ. This webinar is titled Assistive Technology Tools for Writing for Students with High Incidence Disabilities and is presented by Kristen Russell. Kristen Russell, OTR, ATP, is an Assistive Technology Specialist at Advancing Opportunities, bringing over 25 years of experience as an occupational therapist. She has been certified by RESNA as an Assistive Technology Professional since 2006. In her current role, Kristen conducts comprehensive assistive technology evaluations and provides individualized training for children and adults with a wide range of disabilities, with the goal of enhancing independence at school, at work, and in daily life. Kristen has a particular passion for supporting individuals with physical disabilities in using computers, tablets, and smartphones more independently and effectively. She works closely with numerous agencies across New Jersey, including school districts, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, the NJ Traumatic Brain Injury Fund, and the Division of Developmental Disabilities. These webinars are made possible through our partnership with the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education. The statements issued by guest presenters do not reflect the stance of the NJDOE OSE. Please use your professional judgment when implementing strategies and resources within your practice. Now, let's listen to Kristen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Russell. I'm an occupational therapist and an Assistive Technology Specialist at Advancing Opportunities. And I'm going to be talking today during this webinar about assistive technology tools for writing, specifically for students with high incidence disabilities. So my plan is to do a little bit of intro into that area, specifically talking about assistive technology consideration during the IEP process. And then we're going to be looking at tools for writing, including low-tech tools, graphic organizers, dictation, word prediction, text-to-speech, grammar tools, worksheets, specialized software programs, math, and then do a wrap-up. Okay, so just to set the stage a little bit, assistive technology tools in the area of writing are really tools that are going to help students plan their writing, compose their writing, and produce written work more independently and effectively. So assistive technology tools, implementing them for students who are struggling with various areas of the writing process can really help them to show what they know in writing, which is really ultimately our goal. So sometimes there's a challenge specifically with handwriting or spelling or something along those lines that's a barrier to the student being able to show us what they know. So if we implement a tool in there that helps the student to then be able to express himself in writing to their fullest ability. Okay, so just to set the stage, we all know that writing is one of the main tasks in school, and there's so many areas where students can have difficulty in the writing process. Could be handwriting, like I said, could be composing sentences and paragraphs, organizing their thoughts in writing, spelling, grammar, or difficulty revising and editing. And a lot of times writing can be accommodated by a scribe for some of our students who are having more difficulty with the writing process. So we definitely want to be looking at ways to introduce assistive technology tools to help the student be more independent there. And, something that I feel really passionate about is, often students with struggles in school can feel a lot of shame and embarrassment, and things can spiral from there. So it's very important to be providing assistive technology tools. Many of these tools are very simple, free, built in, and can really make a huge impact in the students' lives. So it's very important to be thinking about this before the student is super far along in their education in middle or high school. We want to be thinking about these things as they're really getting to the point in school where they're required to do a lot of writing. All right. So there's so many background skills that are being used when we're asking a student to write. There's so much happening at once. There's the fine and visual motor skills that are involved in handwriting. There's the working memory of holding the information in the student's head long enough for them to write it or type it out. There's all of the challenges with spelling and grammar, the use of vocabulary words, how to make a complete sentence and use our punctuation, planning and pulling all of our information together, proofreading. It is a lot. And there's numerous places where we can run into some barriers. But luckily, there's also numerous assistive technology tools that can really help. So, in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that I'm sure all of you are familiar with, it does mandate that assistive technology devices and services be considered for students with disabilities. So, when we're doing that IEP process, we should be talking about, is there some assistive technology that we should be considering for this student? Okay, so it's really as simple as talking about it, brainstorming about it, potentially trialing some tools, maybe deciding this is a situation where an assistive technology evaluation is necessary, but that doesn't always need to happen. There's a lot of things that we can try even before going that route. So I don't have time, unfortunately, to go through the whole SET framework, but I really encourage you, if you are a person that's working in a school district that is attending IEP meetings, to become familiar with this very simple framework, which I have my little graphic here for. This is a framework to help IEP teams make decisions about assistive technology tools for the students that they're working with. So it takes it into account the student, their strengths, their areas of challenges, their preferences, all the things that make them, the environment in the school, which could be, are they switching classes? What devices do they have? What do they have access to? Do they have Wi-Fi? Are they required to do homework at home? And what is the environment there? And then we think of the tasks. What are the exact tasks that the student is having difficulty with? So really drilling down to what areas, today we're talking about writing, but what are the specific areas where the student is having difficulty with the writing process? And then after we've really gathered all of that information through and thought about it logically, then hopefully it will become clear what are some tools that we should be considering. So we want to think about these three things before we get to the tools. Okay, so that'll help us to really know what we're looking for and make really good informed decisions. So one way to start the conversation would be, let's say we're in an IP meeting. We have a fourth grade student, Jack. He's really struggling with spelling. He's not able to express his knowledge in writing despite receiving intensive instruction to work on those skills. So he's still really struggling and making minimal progress. Here we should be thinking, maybe there are some assistive technologies assistive technology tools we can implement while he's still receiving the instruction on spelling, right? We don't have to stop that in order to start looking at assistive technology tools, but we can do both simultaneously. We can give him some assistive technology tools so that he can keep making progress, so he can feel like he is able to show what he knows in writing. So, if this were a situation in an IP meeting, we'd want to start brainstorming and then maybe do some research, get together, some possible things that we want to explore further. So it's very important with assistive technology that we do trials. We always want to test something out before we say, yes, this is the right tool. So generally you want to trial a tool for 4 to 6 weeks, but it could be shorter, it could be longer, depending on the situation and the student and how frequently you're able to work with that tool. So during that time, we really want to make sure that there is somebody providing the service. So this could be anyone in the school district or possibly an outside person, but somebody teaching the student how to use the tool, somebody supporting the student and checking in and teaching them how to use the tool on the actual task that they're working on. And then also teaching the staff that's supporting that student so they understand and they can see when there's a problem that arises so they can intervene. Okay, so we really want to be checking in and we want to keep data. We want to, in this example, keep some writing samples from before the assistive technology tool was introduced and some writing samples from after the assistive technology tool was introduced, because we want to make sure that we're not continuing to use a tool that is not providing any benefit. Okay, so it's really important to get some data. So just a quick note about handwriting and typing. Many times, if a student is struggling with handwriting, the obvious accommodation there is to be typing more. And I think all of our students now are typing more than they were 5 or so years ago. So that is sort of happening naturally in a lot of cases. But what we always want to do is come back to what's the goal of the task. Okay. Is the goal of the task that we're working on handwriting? Okay. Which for sometimes that may be one of the goals, that we've been working on handwriting, and this is the assignment where we really want the student to handwrite and be thinking about those skills and working on that. But if the goal is to write an essay, and we know that this essay is going to involve a lot of editing, we know that the student is going to struggle with spelling. Typing may be the more logical route to go there. So we always want to keep in mind what is the goal of this writing assignment that we're doing, and think about what would make the most sense for that student. So sometimes maybe some students are handwriting in the class and other students maybe can type that assignment, because if it's a student specifically struggling with handwriting, having to rewrite an essay and having to erase and write over, and the paper gets messy and we get frustrated and we start to shut down. That I'm sure we've all seen that in the classroom. So really thinking of having some flexibility there about how the student produces the writing that they're doing, and allowing typing when it's appropriate. Okay, so I realized that I forgot to say in the beginning, so for students with high incidence disabilities that I'm talking about today would be your students with dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, a specific learning disability in the area of writing. So those very common things that we're seeing in schools, where these students are generally in a regular education class with some extra support. So that's really what I'm focusing on today, but certainly many of these tools could be applicable towards students with other types of disabilities as well. Okay, so with assistive technology, there's more simple, basic, inexpensive, low-tech tools, and then there's mid-tech tools and high-tech tools. Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the low-tech assistive technology tools for writing that are out there. So there are 1,001 different types of pencil grips, as you can see up here, that would help the student to be able to hold the pencil and improve their grasp. There are slant boards here that would put the paper at a different angle that might help visually, but also with their grasp. There's specialized writing paper. Here we have some high contrast lines that help the student to be able to place their letters on the lines effectively to help keep the writing a little bit neater and more organized. There's graphic organizers, which I'll talk about in a minute. There's graph paper, for example, for math. So these are all very common accommodations that would be provided with students. And this is where your school OT really has a ton of knowledge and resources. And these are generally things that are very commonly tried with students. So, this is a great place to start when a student is having difficulty, but sometimes we need something that's a little more sophisticated or that can do a little bit more. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about assistive technology for kind of the first phase of the writing process, which is pre-writing, organization, kind of gathering your thoughts together so that then you can write them out in an organized manner. So if you are in a Google Doc, which most of our students are using these days, if you go to the insert menu, there is a drawing function. And this is a great way where teachers can kind of create their own graphic organizer tool. So graphic organizers are super powerful for all of our students, whether they have a disability or not. It's commonly going to be used, in every elementary classroom, I'm sure, where it helps to break down what the student should be writing. And we're teaching the skills here of how to create an introduction, how to bring in our supporting ideas, how to bring in our conclusion. So there's this, using this drawing tool gives you a lot of ability to create specifically what might work for a specific student, but it also would allow you to create something for, say you have some students in your class that would need a little bit more support. Because you're creating this yourself, you might be able to put in a sentence starter, or you might be able to put in, um, you know, some additional text here to help give an example to the student, or phrase a question a little bit more specifically geared toward the student and their particular needs. So it's great when we can kind of create something our own, so we can really dial it in. This website here will bring you to a great resource of graphic organizers that have already been created using this drawing tool in Google Docs. So it's super awesome. You can just make your own, save this as your own, and then tweak it and edit it to your needs. So this is a great shortcut if you don't want to reinvent the wheel. There are lots of graphic organizer software programs, specifically things that will work in the Google Chrome web browser. So I have 3 listed here: Poplet, Mindomo, and MindMeister. This picture here is an example of something I just quickly created in Poplet. So it's very easy to create these different boxes, and it's wonderful to do this on the computer, because let's say I decide I don't want to use this tool. I can click on it and delete it. I can very easily rearrange and organize. So for students who maybe get really frustrated using a paper graphic organizer because handwriting is a barrier, or because it's very challenging to kind of edit it and erase and move things around, this would be a great thing to consider. It's very simple and easy to use, very visually neat and organized and super flexible. Okay, going into more assistive technology tools for the composition part. So we're sitting down, we are writing the document now. Dictation tool is a very common accommodation for this area. So it kind of bypasses the whole handwriting, typing component. It also is a really great accommodation for students who are struggling with spelling. Okay. So it's not perfect. There's a whole load of skills that are required if a student is going to be dictating text. So if you think about it, if you think about the cognitive load of dictation, so the student has to formulate their thoughts, hold it in their brain, and then be able to speak it out clearly enough where it'll be transcribed correctly. So for some students who have some type of articulation challenges or a speech impairment, I wouldn't say that dictation is off the table. I always try it. A lot of times it can work fairly well, especially with some additional practice. That is maybe a time where I'd want to add in some type of a microphone that is compatible with their computer or their Chromebook to help, get the speech in as clearly as possible. When students are dictating, dictation, as many of you know who do it on your phones or computers, it's not perfect. There are always going to be mistakes. That's just how it is. At this point in time, students need to have some type of way to be proofreading their documents and making corrections. Okay, so if a student is also having some difficulty with the reading, that's when we may want to introduce other assistive technology tools to have the text read aloud to the student so they can hear the mistake, find it, and correct it. One of the biggest challenges in K-12 schools is, if we're suggesting dictation for a student, how are we doing that in the classroom? And I don't have any great miracle solution to that problem. That is a real problem. But oftentimes there's maybe something that we can do to improve that. So letting the student go into a quieter corner of the room, or maybe there's a quiet nook of the room. If the student can possibly, use a different location in the school when they're doing a large writing assignment. But this is often where using the microphone is extra important because the microphone will be closer to the mouth and hopefully be canceling out some of the background noise. Okay. Also, a lot of times students prefer to be dictating at home where there's not a lot of background noise or people potentially listening to them. So it would be important in that instance, if a student needs the dictation tool at home, that the Chromebook be able to go home. They have a microphone to use along with it so they can do more of their writing at home. So it's really important when we are introducing a dictation tool with students to really dial in that dictation, that pre-writing component that we just kind of briefly talked about with the graphic organizers. That becomes even more important. So we're not just sitting down with a blank Google Doc with our microphone and just start talking. We want to have thought through, we want to have a plan, some type of, pre-writing done. Okay. And with dictation, lastly, it's so important that we're teaching it, we're modeling it, we're giving feedback on how to make it understand them better, and we're giving them time to practice. All right. So a couple of dictation tools, if you aren't familiar with them, there is a great option called voice typing right in Google Docs. So if you go to tools, there's voice typing right built in. So this would be in the Chrome web browser on, your Windows computer, your Mac computer, or Google Docs on a Chromebook. So you can really access this anywhere. It's very simple to use. On a Chromebook, there is also a dictation tool that is built in the accessibility settings where you can turn it on. It puts a little microphone down here, and now I can access dictation on really any website. So if I'm dictating a Gmail or I'm dictating in Google Classroom or on a Google form, for example, now I have access to that. So that's really key. If you happen to use Microsoft Word 365, there's a dictate button right there that works. And if you're on a Windows computer and you're not using Microsoft Word or you want to dictate somewhere else, if you look in the settings there, Windows has their own voice typing, which you can start by pressing the Windows key and H. Gives you a little microphone, turn it on, say your thing, turn it off. Works great. iPads, as most of you know, are going to have the dictation tool right here. And a lot of these dictation tools, if you look in the settings, many of them will have a setting for auto punctuation, which will automatically put in punctuation. For most people, I suggest turning this off, especially for our students, because we're teaching them punctuation. Okay. If we're talking about, we're working through these tools in elementary school and on, we are teaching, we want the student to learn where to put the punctuation. We don't want to just automatically put in there. So I suggest turning it off. And then with punctuation, we have to say the word. So we're saying period or comma, exclamation point, whatever it may be. Okay, moving away from dictation and on to word prediction here. So word prediction, if you think about on your phones or a tablet, as you're typing on the on-screen keyboard, it's suggesting words that you might be typing. So that's essentially what I mean by word prediction, or sometimes people call it word completion. Okay. So it is definitely built in on most of our Apple, our phones, our Android phones, tablets, that kind of thing. There are also settings. Some of you may have seen when you're in Google Docs, the Smart Compose, where it will kind of make suggestions to you and you can hit the tab button and accept them. There's also that available on Windows if you look up text suggestions in your settings. Most on-screen keyboards, even like on your Chromebook or on your Windows computer, if you find the setting to turn on your on-screen keyboard, it'll pop a keyboard up on your screen and you can have access to word prediction in there. But for many of our students, particularly those who are struggling with spelling, we need a more robust word prediction tool. So this here is an example of the word prediction tool that's provided in the Read and Write for Google Chrome extension, which is a very common assistive technology tool that's used in schools. So essentially how it works is, say the student's in Google Docs or wherever they're typing, the student starts to type, it's suggesting up to 10 words at a time. They have particular knowledge about common ways that students maybe misspell a word. So here I'm typing the word school. I didn't get the CH. I'm spelling it more phonetically. So once I spot it here on my list, I can click on it. I can press the number 1. And if I'm not sure, I can put my mouse over and I can listen to them and make sure I have the right one before I click on it. So this can be a tremendous support for students. So if you're using maybe, spell check is not correcting a lot of student mistakes, or the student is really spending a lot of time getting the spelling correct on a word or getting the spelling close enough where spell check can fix it, that's when we really want to be looking at at word prediction tools. So especially if a student is maybe wanting to say a word, but it's too hard to spell, so they're picking a simpler one, or they're writing the bare minimum instead of expressing themselves more. Another super awesome tool is called Google Keep. Any of you who have a Google account already have Google Keep, whether you know it or not. So really just go in your search bar and type Google Keep. It'll bring you to a website that looks like this. Google Keep is essentially virtual sticky notes or digital sticky notes. And teachers are super creative in how they use these. So you can create these virtual sticky notes to provide some additional support for writing or many other things. These could be used for keep track of your assignments or anything like that. So a cool way to use this to support writing is once we've made these little sticky notes, when we go to Google Doc, so over here, this is my Google Doc, and I've clicked on this little yellow light bulb symbol that's along the side of the Google Doc on the right side, and it opens up Google Keep. Oops. And I can see and scroll through all of my different notes. So here I have a list of transition words, or I could have spelling words, or I could have certain vocabulary that I'm trying to get the student to incorporate into their writing. I could have a writer's checklist. Whatever idea that you have for your student, any sort of support that they need right there could really help. So you can scroll through and see many different notes, but they're all right there side by side with your Google Doc. So it's really, really helpful. Another way you could use Google Keep is, let's say, the teacher is brainstorming with the student. Maybe either the student or the teacher are jotting down some of the ideas they talked about into a Google Keep note. Now the teacher moves on to the next student, and the student that they were working with can have the notes from their conversation while they're working on their assignment. So really cool. There's so much that you can do with that tool. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. All right, assistive technology for revising your work and editing is the next part. So we've done our pre-writing, we've gotten our text into our document. Now we need to revise it and edit. So some of the assistive technology tools that are available for this area, my number one go-to is using a text-to-speech tool. I use this myself literally every day. It's extremely helpful for people who especially are auditory learners. So basically what I mean by text to speech is if you have your Google Doc open with your writing in there, your computer will read that document aloud to you. I can pick the voice, I can pick the reading speed, so it's appropriate for how I'm processing, and I'm going to see each word highlighted while it's read back aloud to me. So I might hear a mistake that my eyes did not pick up on. Okay, that's very, very common. So to do this, you'll need some type of technology that can read the text aloud. So luckily on a Chromebook, that there we have that ability right built in. So if you look at if you search up Select to Speak in the Chromebook settings, you can turn that on and the student can have the text read aloud. The tool that I just talked about for word prediction that is read and write for Google Chrome, that has a text reader tool inside that works excellent. In fact, that part of the tool is completely free to use. In Microsoft Word, there is also a read aloud function that can help with that as well. So next is Grammarly. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this tool. They do a really good job at advertising. Grammarly is a super powerful spelling and grammar checker. Okay, so obviously we can use the built-in grammar and spelling checker in, our Google Doc or a Microsoft Word document, but Grammarly is going to kind of take it to the next level. Grammarly is free and paid. For the majority of people, free is going to do enough. It's going to meet the need. I often will have people set this up as the Chrome extension. So you're just going to go to the Google Chrome store, install the Chrome extension, make a Grammarly account, and then Grammarly is just running wherever you are in your Chromebook. Okay, so if I'm in if I'm in a Google Doc and I type this sentence, which is loaded with spelling and grammar errors, Grammarly will underline them in red. I will put my mouse over it. It'll show me what it's suggesting. I can either click on it to accept it, or I can click a little trash can if I disagree with it and I think that my writing is correct as is. So it has that super clear red underline, draws our attention. Students go right to it, pretty intuitively typically, and are able to make the corrections very, very quickly. And also it gives a little bit of an explanation on why it thinks it's wrong. So hopefully we can improve as time goes on. But it's a really, really, really powerful tool. And it's something that can grow with students into college, into the workplace for sure. All right, so I want to pause here a second and just demonstrate some of the things that I spoke about. All right, so just before I started this recording, I used my dictation tool to dictate a sentence into a Google Doc. So I did that by going under Tools and clicking on Voice Typing. Okay, so I dictated that, including my punctuation. All right, so I am going to open up this Chrome extension, Read and Write for Google Chrome. And I'm going to demonstrate this word prediction tool here. So I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to kind of demonstrate. So I'm going to write the sentence. My favorite part was going to a Broadway show. Okay. So as I'm typing, so I type the letter M, I see that words are immediately being predicted. If I know how to type the word, I can just continue typing. My favorite. Now, favorite's a difficult word. So usually I try to teach students to try to type out the first syllable. So I have a little bit here, and now I think I recognize it. But by putting my mouse over it, I can hear that text to speech. Oops, ignore my captions there. Okay, so that's it. So I'm going to click on that. My favorite, it's already helping me out here. My favorite part was going to a Broadway. Okay, so I'm kind of typing it in here. It's not getting it. Sometimes that's going to happen where it's not going to get the word that I'm typing. I could go back and tinker it, but I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on that because I don't want to get stalled on that word. All right. And now I need the word show. Okay. So I'm going to put in my period. Okay, and part of this read and write tool, it has that text to speech where it's reading back to me. All right, so what I could do now is I see this is underlined. So this is being underlined by Grammarly. I see this red underline. So I'm putting my mouse over top. I'm seeing what it's suggesting, and I have the option to dismiss it if I think it's correct. So I'm going to click on the correction to make that. Okay, and now I want to listen back. I want to have that text read back aloud to me. So I'm putting my cursor at the beginning, and I'm going to click play on this Read and Write for Google Chrome extension. All right, so I'm hearing it back, and I think it sounds really good. I didn't hear any mistakes, but if I did, I could correct it and then go back in and fix it again. So I also want to show you over here on the right side where my mouse is. This is the Google Keep button. These are all little Google pop-outs. So if I click on this, it will open my Google Keep. So these are notes that I have created before. So for example, here's my writer's checklist. So I could now go through and do I have all of these things, right? If I have homework, here's my ELA homework. I could go right in here and say finish summer vacation essay. Okay, I could start to list things there. I could pull up my transition words. So maybe I want to continue here. I could say, let's say I want to do first, I went to see Frozen or whatever it may be. So this is just a really great way of providing some different little supports built in, and I can just close it and go back to what I was doing whenever I was doing it. All right, the next thing I want to go through is assistive technology tools that can help with worksheets. So worksheets are obviously very common, especially in elementary school, and they can present a particular challenge because, for students who are using assistive technology tools like dictation, word prediction, etc., those tools obviously aren't available when we're doing work on paper. So generally how I would approach this would be, for some students, it may be very appropriate for the student to complete the worksheet on paper, especially if there's limited writing. So maybe it's fill in the blank and there's a word bank. And that might be a good time for the student to be working on their handwriting skills, for example. So we don't always have to put every single worksheet in an electronic format so it can be completed on the computer. We can make that judgment call on a case-by-case basis. But for worksheets that have longer writing sentences, paragraphs, short answers, a lot of times those are worksheets that it would be better to get them onto the computer so the student can use their assistive technology tools to complete them. All right, so I'm going to show you a couple of ways on how to do that. All right, so the tool that I'm going to show you here in a second is called Kami. It's a PDF annotation tool that's very popular in schools. And an alternative to that, especially if the student is already using Read and Write for Google Chrome, the Chrome extension that I showed you before, OrbitNote is a part of that from the same company, and it allows all the tools to work really well together. So that would be another example of a very appropriate assistive technology worksheet annotation tool. So generally what would need to happen to get the worksheet onto the student's Chromebook or device would be to scan it using like the printer in the office, or to use an app on your phone and scan the worksheet by taking a picture of it and making it a PDF, and then putting those documents into Google Drive or putting it right into Google Classroom for the student to access. So I'm going to show you here how that looks specifically. And okay. So just give me 1 second. I'm just going to open up my captions here. Okay. All right, now we're cooking. All right, so here I have a worksheet that I opened right from Google Drive. So my worksheet was in here. I found my worksheet. I right-clicked and said open with Kami, annotate with Kami, and it opened up in this tab. Okay, so in this instance, I have a graphic organizer, which I think is a great example of what is a good idea to have on the computer, because a graphic organizer, we're drafting things out. You might be meeting and conferencing with a student, making some suggestions they might want to edit. So it's a working document where we're not just, we might need to change things frequently. And these can be a real source of problems when they're on paper. So how this works in Kami is I have these tools over here. So I have a text box tool, which I'm going to show you first, and I can pick the color of my text and the font size. So I'm going to do red. So anywhere I click and I type, let me scroll down here a little bit, I can type in the document. Okay. So I like to use a color, a text color rather than black, to kind of differentiate between the worksheet and the text color that the student is writing. So I can click in here and I can type, I'm just going to type main character. Oh my gosh, I'm having trouble spelling now that I'm in the heat of the moment. But actually, that leads me to something else that I wanted to show you is I can also layer on my different assistive technology tools. So I'm going to open up my read and write for Google Chrome right here, my Chrome extension. Here it is. I'm going to click to put my text box in this box, and I'm going to open up the word prediction tool. And let's say I want to write yesterday. Okay, I can start typing my word. Oh gosh, it's already there. Here's okay. So I'm gonna, I got my other captions are kicking here too. So I can layer in my word prediction tools. I can dictate in here whatever I want, whatever the support the student needs. Okay. So additionally, let me show you this worksheet. So this is just a PDF picture of a worksheet that I scanned. I didn't even do that great of a job of it, but I put it up in my Google Drive, and I opened it here. And I want to show you here some additional tools. So I already showed you the text box tool, but there's a drawing tool. So I can again pick my color. So this time, let me pick a purple. Circle the correct answer. Paper is made from. Okay, so I can circle my answer here with Kami. There's also a shapes tool, which kind of makes it a little bit easier. So let's pick my color. Soda can is made from metal, pottery. Now, so I've just showed you a shapes tool, which is a little neater. This is the drawing tool. There's also this markup tool here, which will let me highlight. So pottery is made from clay. So if you can see my highlighting tool. So that really opens it up to you can do most worksheets if you have those things as part of it. So I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to see what that looks like. Now the student can, save that back to Google Drive, print it, email, whatever they may need to do. All right. So moving on to some specialized assistive technology software, I did want to include something a little bit more robust than even the tools that I've shown you here for students who need even a little bit more support. So these would be your students who, really have some emerging writing skills and are not really ready to sit down and be writing with word prediction or dictation. Those tools aren't providing enough support. All right, so I'm going to show you this software tool by Crick Software. It's called Clicker, and it is really customizable. It allows the person who is developing the writing task for the student, whether it be the teacher, the parent, whoever is working on this with a student, to really control and customize the level of support that the student needs. Now, obviously, this takes a little bit more effort, but they've done a really good job at making it as simple as possible. So it would be an example of a way that you could scaffold or differentiate the support for different students. So if you have a classroom of students who have a lot of different writing needs and different levels that they're writing at, this is a great tool to allow you to customize something for one student and then easily adjust it for a different student who is working on different things. So here's an example of Here we have the whole sentence written out, and then what we're asking the student to do is click on the words and write the sentence using by clicking on these buttons. So when I click on the button, it sends it up here into the word processor. There's text-to-speech support, so the students are hearing it. So that would be one level of instruction. Here we're adding in a little bit more choice. So I can choose the wolf or he. So if I said the wolf, it would send it up to here. The next word is was. Now I have a choice of all these green words. So I can listen to them if I need them read aloud. I can choose the one that I think is correct, and then I can continue on. So I could say the wolf was crafty, and maybe I want to say sly, and then put my punctuation in. So I've built that to the next level where now I'm not just having a student copy the sentence, I'm adding in choice. Okay. So if I wanted to really quickly edit out these words and change them to more basic vocabulary words for another student, that is a very quick edit. It can be done. Okay, so moving on to another level of support where we can have word banks in here. So sometimes I would even customize these as sentence starters. Okay, so these are just little text boxes that you have a lot of control of what goes in them. So, using a software like Clicker just really provides a lot more support. And it also is a little bit more involved to implement from the teacher's end, but likely a lot of teachers are doing this manually, kind of by hand. So this gives a lot more, would speed up that process. Additionally, on their website, they have content that's already created that you can download and kind of customize so you have a jumping off point. Another program that I wanted to highlight is one called Right Reader. It's a web-based platform that's free and paid, where you have a lot of you can build in some customized supports for the student. So for example, we can add an image, like if we're having the student kind of like write like a little book, for example, we can add in an image, and then there's a box here where the student can type in, and then if needed, there's an area here where the teacher or the aide or whoever is working with that student can write what it is that the student was saying, in case we need a little bit of clarification from here. We can add a voice recording. We can have text-to-speech tools. So there's a lot of tools that we can build in, and it's a very simple interface, and it just does a really nice job. Okay, talking about math. Math is a whole can of worms. What I'm trying to do here in these next few slides is show you some assistive technology tools for math that can really accommodate handwriting. So if a student is handwriting their math and it is problematic for the student, by that I mean they're not able, them or their teacher are not able to read back their handwriting. The student is making mistakes in calculations because they're reading a 0 when it's really a 6 because of the handwriting challenge. So if that is the block right there, if that is the challenging area, you may want to consider some assistive technology tools for math. Before we get to looking at these higher tech tools, I would definitely want to make sure that we're considering lower tech assistive technology tools, graph paper, working on those those number formations, that kind of thing. So trying to tackle it from that. Typing math, which I'll show you, is definitely possible, but it is a little bit more of a learning curve, okay? It's a little bit more involved. So I would want to make sure we're really thinking it through and we've tried more simple options before getting to this point. All right, so some low-tech tools, which I kind of mentioned a little bit. Obviously, a calculator is an assistive technology tools. There's all different sorts of large print or talking calculators. There's online calculators that would be on the computer, but also graph paper. which I kind of mentioned, we're used to seeing like the traditional white graph paper with the light blue lines, but you can definitely find different or create your own different graph paper here. For example, it has different colors for the columns that would kind of help us not get mixed up between the lines if there's some maybe visual tracking challenges. But also sometimes we need a bigger graph paper. Our traditional graph paper is very small, so sometimes we need to go that route. Also thinking about, manipulatives like using an abacus. And I'll just point out this resource, the Math Learning Center has a lot of great math supports on their website as well. So some higher tech tools. One great place to look at would be Equatio. Equatio is by the same company that makes the read and write for Google Chrome, so they work nicely together. So this works right in Google Docs, and there's a lot of different ways that you can get your math in there. You can handwrite your math with a stylus, and it would be converted into the text. You can dictate your math, which takes some instruction to know how to properly dictate it. So you would dictate it, and it would format it correctly. Or you can type it. And again, there is a little bit of a learning curve to know how to type, for example, things like fractions, right? So this is free and paid as well, but it does a good job at providing a different way for students to write math. Okay. All right. There's another tool called Kiwi Write Math that is a newer tool. And I'm going to play this video here because it'll do a more concise job at explaining it and kind of demonstrating how this tool works. But what I really, really like about this is this can be used for our younger students who are doing stacked math, adding, subtracting, long division is shown here, multiplication, where we have to be crossing out and borrowing and all of that jazz.
Kiwi Write Math, the alternative to pencil and paper math you've been looking for. Our mission at Kiwi Write Math is to make math accessible. Designed for students who struggle to handwrite math automatically and legibly, our assistive technology does the writing so the student can concentrate on solving the math. We take handwriting out of the equation. Kiwi Write Math provides an on-screen set of math keys in 4 different levels to give students just what they need without adding extra visual clutter. Drop-down tabs provide access to extra math symbols too. Fonts and displays are designed to be easy for students with dysgraphia or dyslexia to look at. Kiwi Write offers a grid-based layout for whole number math levels to help students line up problems in rows and columns. The higher math levels provide automatic layout of fractions and more complex equations. Copying math problems from worksheets isn't fun for anyone. Kiwi Write allows you to import an image of a math worksheet and then add your math work right on top. Your work is saved automatically for you for easy access at a later time. Print or export your work from Kiwi Write whenever you want. Kiwi Write Math is a web-based app that runs in a browser window on laptops, desktops, Chromebooks, and iPads. Visit us at www.kiwiwrite.com to start your free trial today.
So that is like super, super, super cool. I just want to show you one thing that I think is just very genius. I pulled up just like a quick math worksheet where, we have $1 and we have to make change here. So let's say the student needs to be able to show their work. There's this little tool here that allows us to build in a little extra space. So I didn't delete anything, but now I have space where the student can show their work, right? We don't have that ability to do that on paper. So I think that's like A+, super, super useful. All right, back into my presentation. All right. Microsoft OneNote can also allow math to be typed. So that's a great option as well, especially if we have like a touchscreen device where we could use a stylus on it. for times when, some things are really difficult to type and maybe easier to handwrite. So that's an option as well. Okay, so moving into kind of wrapping up and pulling this all together, let's take a second and think about a student. Let's have a little case study here. So let's say we have a student with dyslexia who's in 3rd grade. They received Pull-Out Resource ELA. They've been getting occupational therapy in school as a related service to address their handwriting, but there's been limited progress. Okay, the legibility is still poor. The student is having difficulty reading his own writing. Okay, so that makes it really difficult to go back and revise and edit. So in his IEP, he gets extra reading, writing, and math support. The students are using a Chromebook, and he is often scribing to a teacher or aide. Okay, so the student is avoiding writing and is having some behavior issues related to writing assignments. All right, so this would be, I think, a fairly common scenario. All right. So if we're thinking through all of the things that we went through today, do we think that this is a person that may benefit from assistive technology? Hopefully you all are screaming yes, because yes, there are many assistive technology tools that we could consider with a student that may be very helpful to them. Okay. So there are assistive technology tools that can help the student be more independent, needing maybe to scribe less or not at all to the classroom aide or teacher. Hopefully build that student's confidence and decrease their behavior issues because they're more independent and having more success and feeling just better about themselves in general as far as their schoolwork. So as far as what assistive technology tools would we consider? Now, if we were together in person, I would say, let's break into small groups. Let's talk this through. You can pause and kind of make yourself a little quick list, but let's just kind of think through here. So if we have a student that has some difficulty with handwriting, let's get on board with a little bit more typing, right? Let's see if the typing can provide some support, because every time you push the letter M on the keyboard, it's always going to look the same, which is not the case when somebody is handwriting the letter M, for example, right? So that in itself is a huge support, just moving from handwriting to typing. All right. So we could work on typing, keyboarding kind of skills, introduce those. We might want to, it doesn't really say necessarily if the student is having difficulty with spelling, but we might want to explore whether a dictation or a word prediction program may be able to provide assistance there with getting the support, getting the text on the page. Okay. If the student is having some reading difficulty, which it sounds like that may be the case, we might want to implement a text reader tool to provide text to speech, to have the text that the student has written or typed in a document read back to them to aid in proofreading so they can be more independent at finding and correcting their mistakes. And knowing that this student is having some behavior issues related to writing, I'd really want to be making sure I'm listening and giving this student some choice or some part of the decision making, rather than just coming in and saying, we're going to use this tool, trying some different tools out with the student and listening to them and hearing what they are comfortable using and kind of going at their own pace. Okay. So those are just a few things off the top of my head. So this is really, really important, everyone. I wanted to talk just a little bit about implementation, because I've rattled off a bunch of different assistive technology tools for writing, but the real key is to how are we going to get the students using these tools in the classroom for their actual assignments. Okay, so it's one thing to sit with a student and show them how to dictate in a Google Doc, for example. It's another thing for the student to be in the classroom with a writing assignment presented to them by their teacher and them actually using the dictation tool for that specific task. Okay, so we want to really make sure that we're providing support to that student. We're providing human support to help implement that assistive technology tool. That is very, very, very critical. Okay, showing a student one time how to use a tool in a small room by themselves or with a small group of students is not teaching them how to implement it. That's just going over the basics. So what we want to do is make sure that we're using the principles of the SET framework that we talked about before, and we're matching the features of a tool and making sure that we're selecting an appropriate tool for the student that is really going to be helpful. And we know it's helpful because we trialed it and we collected data. Okay, we're involving the student in the decision making, especially as those students are later elementary and older, where we need to make sure we're getting them on board. We need them to see the benefit as well and have buy-in for the tool. We need to make sure that we're training the student, but we're also training the IEP team. Okay, we need to make sure that the people around that student understand how to use the tool and are comfortable. So when they can pop in and touch base with the student, they can see if it's being utilized and if it's being utilized correctly. If we're introducing some of these tools for a student, I wouldn't show them all of these tools at once. I would do one tool at a time, take your time with it, and making sure that we're implementing one tool at a time. As we're implementing the tool, we want to make sure that we're using the tool on a real life task that the student needs to do. And we generally would want to start with an easy task. So let's say we're introducing dictation. We're not going to be using that on the 5-paragraph essay, which is probably a harder writing assignment. We might want to use that for a short answer, right? So we're going to use it on a short answer, maybe an easy assignment, an assignment that's not going to be super hard, and then we're adding on a new tool to boot, okay? So we want to start easy and build. We want to model. We want to show the student how to use it, demonstrate it, let them kind of absorb it by seeing it. And a lot of these tools that we talked about today, some of them are built right into the devices that all the students have. So some of these tools may be appropriate to introduce to the class as a whole, not signaling out certain students, but presenting it as this is a tool that's available for everybody. It's on your device. And then, that kind of takes away a little bit of the stigma. So like I said before, keeping data so you can really see progress. So that is incredibly important. All right. And that's about all we have time for. I really want to thank you for listening to all of this stuff. I love these tools. I think there's so much benefit, and a lot of them are just so simple and available to implement. So I hope that you feel encouraged and kind of excited to get some of these tools on board with your students. My contact info is there, my phone number and my email. If you have any questions or want to talk through assistive technology tools anymore, or you need any support, please let me know. Feel free to reach out. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.